Hello and welcome to Iceland. This is my annual New Year overview where I talk about what to expect in 2026. And this video also explains the bigger picture, and to simplify the journey, we will be following the plate boundaries. Since, in simple terms, Iceland sits on a hotspot, and this hotspot is what built our island, while the tectonic plates continue to push it apart, while magma fill up the gaps. As a result, travelers from both USA and Europe can expect cheaper airfares to Iceland in distant future, which has to be fantastic news. And let's start the journey with the fact that seismicity and volcanism can come in both short and long cycles. We can observe short cycles through the seismometers every month, and the ongoing events on the Reykjanes Peninsula that have resulted in 12 eruptions since 2021 are a part of an 800 to 1000 year cycle. And in this video, I will be raising serious questions about other cycles based on the current events all over the country. So this is an extensive video that will of course include unseen footage while we explore the plate boundaries and actually all volcanic systems in Iceland, since Mother Earth seems to have something big in store for us. And our journey starts offshore, near the former island of Geirfuglasker, which used to be the home of the great auk that couldn't fly and went extinct after my forefathers consumed the last one with potatoes and brown gravy. Shame on them. And the island Geirfuglasker, named after this bird, then disappeared into the ocean, as it were a punishment for greed, leaving only behind a skerry just to make life harder for our fishermen. And the sunken island is not the only island out there that came and left after being exposed to the elements out there. And the magma chamber, where we start the journey, is not the only one around. This is the Reykjanes Ridge, and Iceland is just the part of it that happens to be above sea level. And that is the extra short and accurate way to describe our island. And I'm saying this because according to scientists, we might be looking at a long-term development under there that will eventually lead to an offshore eruption just by the Keflavik International Airport. And that is not good. I am, however, not putting this location on my list of eruptions to expect in 2026. I think it's still too early, despite the numerous seismic events there that are surely strong enough to keep this location on my list over living systems with bad intentions when they are ready. And as for the rest of the peninsula, I'm making this video while I'm waiting for eruption number 13 since 2021 to start. I almost drove to Reykjavik this week to be close by if the eruption would start, since the seismometers are teasing us almost every day. So we are yet again going through this tension. Where, when, and how will this eruption play out? And when we look at the bigger picture by Grindavík village, the inflow of magma into the magma reservoir that has been feeding those eruptions has been slowing down, which means that we might be about to go through the last eruption at this location, unless of course an unexpected event like a tectonic event would disrupt this process we are in now. And what makes this so hard to work with as for future predictions is the variety of situations that we could face. We could face an even worse situation elsewhere on the peninsula, because in terms of lava volume, these 12 eruptions so far have not been very productive. They have, however, been destructive due to the unfortunate location, but we can easily categorize them as minor eruptions. And we have experts who have been saying that the so-called Krýsuvík volcanic system has already woken up It's the system that we don't want to wake up, the system that runs almost through the capital, so the Grindavik event could easily just be the beginning of something far worse. It is as simple as that. And Icelandic scientists have always been very clear about it, that when one system wakes up, the others follow. So that is not a subject of debate. But the timing between those chapters is, however. Some scientists say that we can just relax for the next 200 years, while others say that the Krýsuvík system is just this ticking time bomb. And I say for myself, and I have mentioned that frequently on the channel, that I'm under the impression now that there will be very little time until the next event hits us. And I'm of course referring to the new earthquake epicenter that actually transferred to Lake Klevarvatn in 2023. And is that a direct continuation of what we have seen so far by Grindavik and the Blue Lagoon? And the Met Office has been saying that they need to look into this situation by the lake. So these are just some of the many unanswered questions I have in this video about what 2026 will bring. And the easy guess for the Reykjanes Peninsula is eruption number 13. In addition, it's possible that we could have another eruption from that same source, or if the magma inflow doesn't slow down more than it has done so far. And I expect stress from the events near Grindavik to continue redistributing along the fissure swarms across the peninsula, meaning that a magnitude 4-5 plus earthquake is not unlikely while this transfer goes on. However, I'm not going to go as far as to predict the major earthquake near the city that we are waiting for to occur in 2026. I have mentioned the tension around this fault frequently, but still I'm going to say, since it didn't snap during all this action between 2021 and 23, it takes actually a lot to trigger it. And the only thing we know for sure is that this fault is locked and loaded. And I have to say that as the danger zone gets closer to the city, the more difficult it becomes to get the experts to comment, because this is of course a sensitive issue that needs a careful approach. But this has also to do with our building regulations and some of the nonsense that I've been seeing near the plate boundaries, or a new building land where building land should not be. So the Reykjanes Peninsula is a big deal, and I suspect that in 2026 I will have to produce several hours of updates from this region alone. And our next stopover is also close by the city, at Tectonic Junctions, where the Reykjanes Peninsula ends and the South Iceland fracture zone starts, which is a direct continuation of the systems on the peninsula. And the village of Hveragerði is therefore categorized as a part of the South Iceland fracture zone. And I don't see a reason to expect any major events there this year. But some of the tension on the peninsula has been transferring over there, so it wouldn't be a surprise if something would snap there due to the unrest on the peninsula, although we don't expect any groundbreaking events there. Not until we get close to the volcano Hekla, which is known for its unpredictable nature. And Icelandic scientists have hypothesized that the increased number of volcanic eruptions in Hekla may be due to new magma chambers forming at a shallower depth, raising the questions if it's new magma chambers responsible for those frequent and small eruptions since the big one in 1947. And if that is the case, the large magma chamber that earned this volcano the nickname Gateway to Hell has been reloading since the 1947 event, meaning that the next event from the main magma chamber could be enormous, from almost 80 years of accumulated pressure there. And as for 2026, when I looked at the seismic activity around Hekla since 2020, I found no significant changes, always somewhere between 50 and 70 earthquakes annually. So I don't see any reason to place this volcano on the naughty list. It should, however, be noted that Hekla is particularly unpredictable type of volcano that does not provide any clear warning signs. We might only get 30 minutes to get ready before the next volcanic eruption starts. And if I were to suggest a movie title and a song to describe the worst of Hekla, the movie title would of course be Flashdance, with the iconic song that captures Hekla's chaotic nature. And let's shift our focus slightly back now to the tectonic junctions near the central volcano Hengil, just by Reykjavik. I have been flying over there with a thermal camera every now and then, especially above the highway that has been warming up due to changes in geothermal activity, and I will do my next flyover there very soon. And this part of the plate boundaries is quite special due to the tectonic junctions, where we have this extra branch that runs through Þingvellir National Park, and this part of the plate boundaries is widely misunderstood, even amongst the Icelanders, because this has been sold as the plate boundaries between the North American and Eurasian plates, which is extremely misleading because between Þingvellir and the volcano Hekla, we actually have our own intraplate. So the tourist plate boundaries by Þingvellir are the boundaries between the North American plate and our own interplate. And this can best be described as a depression due to a deflating magma chamber and its extremely impressive formation as such. And this fracture swarm, it extends all the way to Langjökull Glacier, where it seemingly fades out, although there is plenty of seismic activity around there. So this is living and breathing ground that could just as well wake up again someday in some form, although it doesn't deserve a place on the list for 2026. The next system we cover is, however, way closer to it, or the Snæfellsnes Peninsula, and the earthquakes that I've actually covered numerous times before, since what we have is magma on the move searching for the easiest path upward, which has resulted in earthquakes at a depth of 20 kilometers, and the question is whether this process will stop or continue until a volcanic eruption occurs. In terms of seismic activity, the uptick between 2024 and 25 is very obvious. However, it has to be clear, the seismometer network has been improved, so it detects more tremors now. Nevertheless, these readings indicate a strong increase, and January 2026 is starting off notably strong. So will this end up with a volcanic eruption? And when? I can see more earthquakes at a shallower depth than at first. I have the feeling that this is moving up slowly and surely. And one of our experts mentioned that once magma reaches a depth of 10 kilometers, things will move way faster from there, much like what happened on the Reykjanes Peninsula in 2021. So if earthquakes will at some point in time confirm magma at a 10 kilometers depth, that's when it's time to turn on the webcams in this very beautiful agricultural region. And luckily we don't expect a large eruption there, but we never know. This would be the first one for thousands of years. And although I feel as it's justifiable to include this location on my list of volcanoes anticipated to erupt in 2026, I am currently seeing two other systems more likely to cause problems. So statistically, it's very unlikely that three systems will erupt in the same year. It just doesn't happen here in Iceland. So it's mainly for that reason why I'm not putting the West Iceland earthquake region on my list of volcanoes this year that might erupt. There is just so much going on elsewhere, and this region likely needs more time. And let's look at the major volcanic systems that may erupt in 2026, starting with Katla volcano, which has a reputation for teasing us. Experts suggest that the recent unrest indicates significant events soon, and I've actually heard that one before, several times over the last 30 years actually. Katla is, however, long overdue, and while 2026 could potentially be Katla's year, I'm not betting on it. Since based on seismic activity and the frequency of eruptions, I'm focusing more on Vatnajökull glacier, the ice cap that covers 7 volcanic systems, all relatively close to the Bárðarbunga volcano that is believed to sit above the mantle plume, making it the mother of all Icelandic volcanoes. Bárðarbunga is still reloading after the 2014 eruption, and scientists believe that 2014 marked only the beginning. And when we look at the sequence of events since then, the scientists seem to have been correct. The magma chamber of Bárðarbunga is expanding. Earthquakes there are frequent, so the 2014 eruption was just the beginning. Scientists got that right. And as for a possible scenario, Bárðarbunga could erupt under its thick ice cap, resulting in floods that might significantly impact Iceland's electricity production due to flooding. The Bárðarbunga magma chamber could also create a subsurface magma dike, shooting lava tens of kilometers away from the source, and any eruptions from Bárðarbunga could be devastating, wipe out agriculture in large areas, and moreover, the expanding magma chamber could actually trigger eruptions in nearby systems like Grímsvötn, which is known to be affected by Bárðarbunga. So this region is the hotspot of volcanism in Iceland, with immense ongoing activity. The Bárðarbunga system alone stretches almost 200 kilometers southwest, all the way into Iceland's largest ice-free caldera, the Torfajökull system, which has also been showing signs of unrest and ground uplift, but it remains unclear if that unrest is linked to Bárðarbunga. The relationship between those two systems is very odd. And to the northeast of Bárðarbunga, we have the volcano Askja, which has been preparing for an eruption since 2021. Scientists claim that we have a significant amount of magma accumulating under there, at least 10 cubic kilometers, even way more. And the extensive fracture zone of Askja, it stretches to the northeast, almost 200 kilometers. So these two systems alone rule this huge part of our island. And both of those systems are gearing up for activity. And to complicate matters even further, the volcano Öræfajökull, Iceland's highest peak, is sitting on a separate volcanic belt under the glacier with clear signs of unrest since 2017. So the largest systems in Iceland are all getting ready simultaneously, just like many of the smaller systems around. And this leads me to question whether this is a build-up to a major event, or is this just a coincidence? Major events, as we define them, occurs every few hundred years. The last such event was in 1783 from the Grímsvötn system under Vatnajökull glacier. And given the scale of magma accumulation all around there, it raises a valid concern. So the key question for 2026 is what will give in first? Based on statistics, my guess would be the Grímsvötn volcano. And I must admit that I tend to wonder whether these small frequent eruptions in Grímsvötn are merely samples, while the main reservoir readies itself for a larger event, or something like the Laki eruption in 1783. And I think it's a fair question. The eruptions witnessed by my generation are simply friendly campfires compared to the 1783 event. which produced almost 15 cubic kilometers of lava, covering 600 square kilometers from 140 craters. And the Laki eruption and its aftermath resulted in a drop in global temperatures as 120 million tons of sulfur dioxide were released into the northern hemisphere, leading to crop failures in Europe. So eruption of that scale is not something that only we Icelanders should be concerned about. And I am curious if it's technically possible that Grímsvötn volcano is behaving like Hekla volcano, perhaps releasing little pockets of magma, just putting on a little show, while the larger sack of magma is waiting for its chance. Of the 7 volcanic systems under the glacier, 5 show clear signs of unrest. So is that a coincidence, or is the expanding magma chamber under Bárðarbunga responsible? And scientists seem to think that the Bárðarbunga magma chamber will not fill up soon. It's going to take more time. And I'm actually buying into that. So I'm going to say that this will not be the year of Bárðarbunga. The expansion will continue and something else will give in first. And Grímsvötn volcano is on the top of my list. So let's move further north to the volcano Askja, where a huge amount of magma has been accumulating over the last few years. And the ground uplift is still going steady. Not as fast though as it used to be, but scientists say that this can only end up one way. There will be a volcanic eruption in Askja volcano. And I'm increasingly curious about the connection between Bárðarbunga and Askja, or if there is any connection. It's logical to assume that Askja is feeding from the mantle plume as well. And when I look at the run-up to the 2014 Bárðarbunga eruption, I have this time-lapse that shows when the magma dike was forming, when the magma was finding its way away from the magma chamber. And the lava came up midway between those 2 systems. And it's just so interesting to see what was going on at Askja volcano at the same time. So I have this question. Is it a coincidence that those 2 huge magma chambers are filling up at the same time? And I'm asking this mainly because we have been led to believe that these systems are completely separate systems. And as for the question, will Askja erupt in 2026? Should I put it on my list? I have to admit that all last year I was changing my mind about that every now and then. And still today I'm leaning towards Grímsvötn. I think it's the logical thing, but there is no denying to it. We have a major event in the making by Askja, so let's move to something simpler and finish the plate boundaries in the north, where we don't expect any volcanic activity, but we do have Iceland's most dangerous fault zone there, the Tjörnes fracture zone, with enough tension to produce up to a magnitude 7 earthquake. And I'm not going to bet on 2026 as the big year, although we might get several earthquakes around magnitude 5. Which is quite normal, especially offshore. And finally, I have this honorable mention that goes to Hofsjökull volcano in the middle of Iceland. And we have a new information from there, important enough to make me script a separate video that will be online soon, since what we have there is a new ice cauldron from what might likely be increased geothermal activity. And I have already covered the increased seismic activity there. So I have a story there on the way with the new footage. And overall, it's just unbelievable how much build-up is present under Iceland now. And where it's going to take us is uncertain. We do have to come to terms with the fact that every few hundred years we will get hit with events of such magnitude that they will change their life around here for a long time. And warnings about such events have been heard from experts actually quite recently, but also quite gently, like this island can do certain things. and things won't stay like they are now forever. But such discussions have never developed into a major risk assessment covering the worst-case scenario. And a big part of the worst-case scenario is the total destruction of large parts of the electrical system. And I'm talking about both the hydropower plants and the grid, of course, due to floods mainly. Agriculture would be wiped out for years, like the complete tourism industry, and our island could in fact become uninhabitable after a major event of the kind that has happened and will happen again and again. But let's not make this too dark. But right now I have the feeling that all of this build-up in all the major systems and other systems as well is the path to some sort of an event in the next years or decades that will be way harder to deal with than what we have been fighting the last years. But let's hope I'm wrong. And with that, I'm sending you best regards from the volcano island, Iceland.